Before we go any farther, I need you to answer this question. As a modern player, do you remember the last time you thought Tarmogoyf was a relevant Magic card? Answer in the comment section down below. Be just brutally honest with me. The card is just so era defining, and I think it really marks the shift of Modern, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. It's an idea that really has been boiling up with factors that I will not be mentioning, but really brewing to the point where I believe Tarmogoyf is the marker of current Modern shifting away. And it's been kind of this remnant marker that no one has wanted to pay attention to until now. It has become very blatantly clear that if Tarmogoyf isn't what it used to be, then Modern is not what it used to be. Modern is a different format. It is no longer the turn 4 format that everyone looks for, where Burn can win on turn 4, where Splitter Twin was winning too consistently on turn 3 or turn 4, or whatever they wanted to say. Modern is in a different era. It's no longer defined by Tron and Titan and Storm and Burn and whatever decks that you wanted to put together. It is completely askew. There's combo, there's 4-color, and honestly, I will say that there are archetypes of past. They are just improved upon, honestly. It is, in many folks' eyes, a better Modern. It is more diverse. There are more options in general, and I think that's a good thing. But I think a lot of people don't understand why. They don't understand why Tarmogoyf had to fight for everyone's right to enjoy the format. And I say this because it was the marquee 2-drop. When it came to playing Jund, when you came to playing 3-color mid-range, Tarmogoyf was the best threat that you had. It was the best option. It was the kind of rule-defining card of you'd ever bolt a Tarmogoyf, in the sense that if your Tarmogoyf is a 2-3 and there are no instants in graveyards and you bolt that Tarmogoyf does not die, because then the lightning bolt enters the graveyard, state-based actions are checks, it becomes a 3/4, and that bolt only marks it with 3 damage. And that was the kind of era that Tarmogoyf was very relevant in, when only 2 1-drop removal spells existed. Path to Exile and Lightning Bolt were the only good options against any of the format whatsoever. We literally had to be playing 2-mana removal spells in black to get anything going, or it had to be in Rakdos, or you had to delve for it, or whatever it might be. And so times are different now. It's very crazy to think how meta-defining Fatal Push was. Fatal Push is probably one of the craziest shifts in Magic the Gathering. And let me know if you, in the comment section down below, if you wanted me to kind of extrapolate on that more. I think a lot of folks don't credit Fatal Push enough, but Fatal Push, in my opinion, was almost as defining as like the fetch lands, in my opinion. Fatal Push changed what it meant to be removal. It defined removal. It changed the rarity of what a card was. It really was fire design as a whole, but that's a whole other thing. I think really what it is that Fatal Push changed the playability of Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf now had to be more, and it still was more. The card was really good. You played it in Jund decks. You had your 1-drop, then you had your 2-drop. Whether your 1-drop was removal or discard, or heck, nowadays it's just Ragavan. Then you could play Tarmogoyf on 2, which is a 2/3, a 3/4, whatever it might be, based on fetches and different sorceries coming down. And after that, in the old days, you played Liliana the Veil, and then at some point you played Seasoned Pyromancer. Now you just play Renin 6, and you just go off from there. There's so many different things that you could be doing around a Tarmogoyf. And Tarmogoyf just became this threat that, honestly, it was just big. It was just efficient. It didn't need to have flying and trample or any type of evasion. It just presented you with this idea that you need to efficiently be able to remove this. And if you can't do that, then I'm going to win the game, because the decks that played it always 1-for-1'd you better. And that was the key. It always was a better threat than the answer that you could put across it. And even with Path to Exile, against a mid-range deck, providing them with an extra land drop led them into a Bloodbraid Elf that they could then ramp into and then win the game from there. It's very important to understand why this threat was good, because the answers presented to it didn't do so efficiently until Fatal Push came around. And then Fatal Push was the big shift. I mean, Fatal Push was the card that the Tarmogoyf decks would play against other Tarmogoyf decks, against other aggro decks, against other mid-range control, whatever it might be decks. And so Fatal Push was everywhere. And that was a big shift for Tarmogoyf, because now Tarmogoyf had a real answer. It didn't need to be blocked. It didn't need to be outpowered. It didn't need to be sacrificed. It could just be removed. And so Tarmogoyf ended up being this card that you needed to answer better. You needed to be a better Tarmogoyf against your opponent's opposing Tarmogoyfs. And what that really meant was eventually, it's not just about the Tarmogoyf. There were just better creatures than the Goyf. You could only print a Lurgoyf that only did as much. There will never be a one-drop Lurgoyf that does exactly what Tarmogoyf does. There will never be some type of token generating Tarmogoyf thing that makes copies of Tarmogoyfs. But there will be Goyf. There will be the Tarmogoyf. And so with that defining creature, you could print other creatures that were bigger or faster. You printed Ragavan, which was faster at 1 and did so much more, and your opponent had to remove it. And so now they're on the defensive, because then you played Ragavan and then they removed it. Like, okay, so that's a removal spell gone. You can then play a Dragon's Rage Channeler, which then, based on the Delirium that was feeding the Tarmogoyf, could fly over top of it and provide Surveil. And so all these different threats started coming out and outclassing Tarmogoyf. I mean, the card was just so valuable that it created a Magic the Gathering controversy on its own. It created Goyf Gate. Remember when Goyf Gate was a relevant thing, where you had a kind of Pro Tour draft player that picked a Tarmogoyf that was worth like so much money because it was like a foil or like an alt art. But then the correct choice was actually another card in that draft. For their pool, it was correct to take the other card, but they took the Goyf. And a lot of people were mad that this ruined the integrity of the game. And actually, honestly, if you have that opinion, just unsubscribe to my channel. It was completely correct as an average player, and honestly as any player, to pick the Goyf in that situation. You are utterly incorrect if you think it's incorrect to not do so. From a viewership perspective, players wanted to see the big crazy pull, and the few niche people that thought that it was incorrect for the game and it's ruined the integrity of the game, again, unsubscribe to my channel. Your opinions don't matter to me. Like, you actually just don't understand anything. Goyf Gate was completely unnecessary. It's completely blown out. It's because of the value of Goyf. The card was so powerful. It did so much in that draft set, and it was a defining card in that era. The card led to Jund being a $2,000+ deck that just surprised the masses. And now, honestly, $2,000 decks, $1,000+ decks aren't that crazy in Modern. It is insane. Obviously, the 4-color decks can get there at some point, but it's important to note that that was a crazy time in Modern. Those prices are insane. And now Goyf is being printed in the Fallout preview decks. It's being left to the wayside and printed in supplemental sets for Commander players that don't necessarily care about this card, because when it just comes to playing a 2-drop, it needs to have evasion. It needs to do this. It needs to do that, because you're playing against 4 players in Commander. The card sucks in Commander. So what if you have an 8/9? That 8/9 gets trumped by a 1/1 soldier token. Big whoop, and now you attacked, and now you're open from the other 2 players that will then be able to attack you from there. And you probably create an enemy out of that 1 player who now has to lose their soldier token. Regardless, in EDH it sucks. In constructed formats it sucks because it's been outclassed, and it's just gone from a defining era. And I think that's really what I wanted to talk about today. I think Tarmogoyf was the defining card that told us that when Tarmogoyf is bad, Modern is changed. This is no longer the Modern of Tarmogoyf. This is Modern Horizons Modern. It is something completely different. Our expectations of this format have to be completely different, and we have to approach, in my opinion, the banned and restricted list, the curation of the format, completely different. We can't just be sitting here playing with our old decks and hoping to carry them from meta to meta to meta. Things are going to change. The format is different. Wizards of the Coast is printing directly into it with the Modern Horizon sets every 3 years. And we're about to see the great big rotation of Magic the Gathering one more time this summer. And that's going to be something that I don't think a lot of people are ready for, especially with all the things running around right now in terms of leaks and what people are seeing. I think we all see some big changes happening later this summer. And again, Tarmogoyf was, or the lack thereof of the popularity and playability of Tarmogoyf, is a big note of this era being gone. And I think we need to accept that. It was truly the marker of it all. It was truly the defining poster child of Modern in many ways. The quintessential true drop, just gone from our visibility. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know if you think if Tarmogoyf really was defining creature. Was it the card that, you know, really said that modern was this way? And when did you first come across the change in that shift? When did you truly realize that Tarmogoyf just isn't that great of a creature? I'd love to hear a comment section down below, and, you know, just your thoughts on a video that I just wanted to rant about a little bit. Tarmogoyf, crazy creature.